in real numbers, 5,000 men. We talked about last week, there's women and children involved here. So there's a huge mass of people that have just been fed with a little boy's sack lunch. The people are so impressed with what Jesus has just done that they quite literally, the scripture says, want to grab him and force him to become the king. Jesus realizing, and I'm going to use the word, the severity of the situation. They're about to try to force him to become the king because they don't realize he is the king. He already is the king of all kings. They don't realize that because they're looking for a king like they read about. I say read about, heard about is a better word. Through the generations, going back to David, the king, King David. And there's a lot of reasons for King David. We've talked about, numerous times. One of the things that David was recognized for was his ability to fight and to thwart the enemy. And here the Jews had a oppressive leadership from Rome that they were wanting emancipation from because they didn't want to live under this Roman authority. They wanted the Messiah to come and help them get their swords sharp and go fight the enemy and overthrow Rome. That's what their vision of a king was all about. And so they see Jesus, and he's able to do these miracles, and they're thinking, there's an opportunity here. We think we find our guy that could help us be emancipated from Rome. Jesus realizing that that's their thought process, and I think we're going to study here in the near future, maybe even next week. They also see a free lunch ticket. We talked about that last week. Hey, he made us some food this time. A little bit further than we're going today. He's going to say, "Yeah, you guys want a free meal." So this is what the Jews are seeing in Jesus, a man that could do all these great things for them. They're about to try to make him king. And so what Jesus does here is he has his disciples get in the boat and get out of there. In fact, in Mark's account, starting in verse 45, he says, immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. So he's having the 12 get in the boat and go even before he's done anything with the crowd. That's how important Jesus saw it was to get his disciples away from this brooding situation that the Jews were trying to, in their minds, grab him and make him the king. So Jesus needs to get his guys out of that environment because that environment could cause them to be kind of messed up in their thinking. And in truth, aren't they already having trouble with their thinking? Well, we're going to find out even more about that. They're already having trouble. And so what happens when you're in a crowd of people that are responding in a certain way and you're not that, you haven't had your thinking clarified to the point where I know exactly what to do in this situation? Well, you get caught up in it, right? And so I think that's exactly what Jesus is doing, is he's getting the 12 to get out of that situation and move on while he deals with this situation going on with the crowd. And so he sends these guys on. In John's account, it appears that they go to the boat and they kind of get out there a little bit, but then they don't just go for it, because it seems like they're actually almost believing that he's going to come eventually here, and they don't want to leave without him. Because after all, the boat's his ride in their mind. We don't want to leave without Jesus, because how's he going to get to Bethsaida if we leave him? Makes sense, right? Makes sense to us. That makes sense. But a little bit later, he doesn't show up, and so, interestingly enough, they do leave him. And we could discuss, well, why would they do that? Because Jesus told them to do it, didn't he? He said, get in the boat and go to Bethsaida. They were just doing what he told them. So Jesus dismisses the crowd, and now what does he do? Well, verse 46, after he had taken leave of them, he went up on the mountain to pray. I talked to you last week, a week before that too, I think, about the idea that when Jesus performs a miracle, and some people have trouble with this idea because they think that it diminishes the eternal power of God. I don't think that that's the case here. Jesus is a man who has been empowered to do certain things while he's on the earth. But it takes it out of him. He feels power when miracles are happening through him. He feels power leaving his body, we talked about. And some people have trouble with that. I'm not sure we should have trouble with that. I think it speaks to Jesus was human in form, and he could feel the power going out of him when miracles were occurring. How did he recharge himself? He withdrew to be with the Father. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? Doesn't that speak volumes to us in our lives? We are beaten down. We work hard. We deal with situations of life that come that are not of our own making. But we're trying to help people through situations that are very challenging. It could be physical. It could be emotional. It could be financial. It could be spiritual even. We're trying to minister to people. And when we minister and minister and minister, we become tired. It wears us out. And so what should we do? We should do what Jesus does. We should withdraw and spend time with the Father, recharging ourselves with power from God. So that's what Jesus does here. He goes and he spends time on the mountain praying. Verse 47 says, and when evening came, the boat was out to sea, and he was alone on the land. Mark writes in very clear, just who's his audience? Rome, right? Romans. He's writing to the Romans. Romans just want to cut to the chase. There's only 16 chapters in the whole book, right? The whole story of Jesus in 16 easy books or chapters, right? Cut and dried. Mark speaks in very clear terms. So evening came, boat's out to sea, he's there alone. What happens then? And he saw that they were making headway painfully. I like that language. They were making headway painfully, but they were making headway. For the wind was against them, and about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. Now let's get this next piece, though. He came to them. The other Gospels talk specifically about Jesus coming to them in the boat. And I think it's because he ultimately comes to the boat. Mark throws in this little tidbit that I love, and I've always pointed this out when talking about this lesson. Matter of fact, you remember Dad in Abilene, we talked about this. He meant to pass them by. I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of people read this story, and that particular little nugget goes for a host of reasons. He meant to pass them by. What does that mean? He sees they're having trouble. Was Jesus just going to let them keep having trouble? That why he wanted to pass them by? He didn't need their ride. He was already making good progress himself, walking on the water. He didn't need to get in the boat. He didn't need to get in the boat. He had his own way to go. Why was he going to pass them by? Well, let's get some ideas. Why was he? Why would he let him pass? Why was he going to just pass them by? Opportunity for them to have more faith. How, though? Okay, so figure out how to get through adversity on your own, maybe. Work out your own plan. Not bad, not bad. There's biblical principles behind that. Don't expect somebody to just come and do your work for you. He who doesn't work doesn't eat kind of concept, all that kind of thing. What about this one? He was going to walk and then being on the shore of Bethsaida. Then when their boat shows up, they're going to say, Lord, you're already here. Well, we waited on you as long as we could, and go through that discussion maybe, who knows. Yeah, the last part says their hearts were hardened. We'll talk about that hopefully in just a minute. What happened there and everything. They didn't understand the loaves still. We're gonna find out. They still don't understand the thing about the loaves, which, gee, that's an interesting thing too. What do they understand about that? Yeah. Okay. Okay, I love that. I love that. And repeat that. Make sure I get that on all you. By the way, all you internet people, thank you for being here. They're in a situation that's not going well. The waves are beating against them. They're not making any progress. They're getting worn out and liable, literally liable to be, this is metaphorically, not practically, they're allowed to literally just be dead in the water. Row, row, row your boat until I can't row the boat anymore. I'm too tired to row the boat. And so I'm going to sit here and rest for a minute. And if that means we're blown back on the shore where we just left, well, I guess that's what's going to happen. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could capsize a boat. Oh, yeah, yeah. Jesus could solve this for them just like that. And actually, in fact, he does solve it for them just like that. We're going to find out. So Jesus was going to walk by. Could have been for all the reasons we've discussed. They see him out there walking on the water, and the first thing that comes to their mind is, not only are we out here in this storm, not making good progress, already terrified about what we're facing, and now here comes a ghost. Here comes a ghost. And by the way, if you if you look at the basically the analogous relationship of ghosts to humans, when do the ghosts show up metaphorically? Well, when you're about to meet your maker. The ghosts show up to help you get to where you're about to go. So here's a ghost. So they're even more afraid. Jesus realizes that's what's going on, right? And Jesus says, don't be afraid, it's me. It's me. Yeah, go ahead.
You just brought me around to the idea that they got themselves out of a bad situation. And normally we would tend to say, okay, we're good. But they weren't because they still didn't have him there with them.
Yeah, and actually, they were still in a very bad situation. they didn't know who Christ was, or they would have said to him, Lord, like they're going to here in the near future, Lord, don't you care that we're perishing? Here he's back at the boat sleeping in that story. We're going to study that, I think. Lord, wake up. We're dying. Don't you hear the waves and the storm? Don't you, quote, see what's going on? We're in a world of hurt here, and we need help. If they would have realized it was Jesus, they could have said that. But they didn't realize it was Jesus. And then when he says, it's me, let's get to that next piece. Peter, who always seems to impulsively say or do something, he's a whole lot like me, or I'm a whole lot like him. In the face of whatever, don't just stand there, do something. Just do something. It might not be the right thing to do, and you can figure that out in a minute, but don't just stand there, do something. Say something. Do something. Just something. Don't just do nothing. See, that's Peter. And so Peter says, Lord, if it's really you, bid me to come out and walk on the water with you. Now that's just crazy. Why do you think? And what's funny about it to me, of all the things Peter could have come up with, how did it come down to, well, if it's really you, Lord, have me get out of the boat and walk on the water? How did he come up with that one? He could have said something, I mean, anything at that point, but he comes up with that one. Yeah.
They're learners, and they had to go through all of these things, just like we did today, to
Sure.
build our strength, to build our faith. And they go through each step, but each step they're growing just a little bit more, a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. They are literally, as the word says, disciples. They are learners. They are followers. They are being schooled by Jesus as to what exactly it's going to ultimately mean to be a follower of his. And so they're going through this process. It's a learning process. Let's get back to Peter. Lord, if it's really you, bid me to get out of the boat and walk on the water. Now, the shocking thing, I say shocking thing, I think it is a shocking thing, don't you? And Jesus says to him, come on. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, there are people who take what is about to happen here and they seem to use it against Peter. Well, so Peter gets out of the boat. He starts walking on the water. He sees the waves. He takes his focus off Jesus. He sees the waves, and he starts sinking, and then says, Lord, I'm sinking. Help me. And the Lord grabs a hold of him, lifts him up, gets him back in the boat. And people say, now you see, Peter, he did not have enough faith. And he just didn't have, if he would just have had faith, and the Lord says, if you just would have had faith, and Peter should have had faith, and faith this, and faith, and faith. I want to ask you, who else got out of the boat? Who else even asked about getting out of the boat? Who tried to get out of the boat? Who did anything other than just sit in the boat where things were not going well and we were in a bad situation? Nobody else got out of the boat. So we have situations come up in our life that test us, that test our faith. We have a choice to make when we're put to the test. Either we stand firm in our faith and say, if I am facing adversity, at least I know that the Lord is with me, and my part of this should be do what I can and trust the Lord to do anything else that needs to be done. But the only way that works is if we keep our focus on Jesus and not, the metaphor here is, the waves. I started the lesson by saying we live in perilous times. Sadly, I think we are entering even more perilous times, to where if you thought it was bad, you've seen nothing yet. I think that that's going to happen. There's evidences of that happening. So the question is, even though there's waves, even though there's a storm, even though you fill in the blank, even though there's wars, even though there's evil being done, even though, are you keeping your focus on Christ? And then secondly, are you doing all you can do in your situation to try to rectify the things that are not right, the things that are not good? Are you doing your part to the best of your ability, or are you just sitting in the boat? Waiting for somebody else to come to your rescue? See, that's the hard part, isn't it? See, that's the hard part. We find ourselves in a situation of, as they did, there's life storms going on around. I'm not sure what to do. And so what would be better than making a mistake is not do anything until I identify what exactly needs to be done. However, it doesn't seem to come. We have to get out of the boat. We have to start taking action to try to rectify our situations. And then if we keep our focus on Jesus, we will be able to walk on the water. I'm going to stop that thought process here to interject this. What do you think would have happened if Peter would have kept his eyes on Jesus? You think he and Jesus would have just kept on walking on the water, and the other guys, hey, we'll see y'all when you get there. Peter and I are on our way. We'll see. We'll see you when you get there. That's what you think, isn't it? That's what I think. I think if Peter would have kept his eyes on Jesus, he would have kept walking on the water, and eventually somebody else would have said, well, I ain't sitting here. I'm not going to stay right here because he seems like he's doing good. I'm going with him. Why is that important? Why is that important in this lesson? Because we encourage one another. We edify one another. We help one another to be able to say, well, He's not just sitting in the boat waiting for somebody to do something. He's trying something, and it appears to be working pretty good. I should do that too. That applies to us too, doesn't it? We have issues going on in the world that we're not red hot about. Well, stand up and start doing something about it. And as you start having successes, other people are going to look at it and they're going to say, well, yeah, maybe I ought to get involved with him or her. They seem to be doing something about the very thing that I'm not all that red hot about either. But at least they're doing something. At least they're moving in a direction.
The version I'm reading here says that when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and beginning to sink. And so I'm seeing him focusing on his physical problems, like you said, rather than focusing on Jesus.
I think he absolutely was.
Our storms are not always going to be the same, but we are all going to experience turbulent times.
And here's the point that I'm trying to make. In the midst of things that are not going like you want or need, they needed to advance the boat and get to shore instead of sitting out here in the storm. That's a fair statement, isn't it? We need to get out of the storm. We need to get out of the storm. That's the same thing as us. We need to get out of certain things that are not conducive to the Christian walk, for example. Let's just bring it back to that. We need to eliminate certain things that are taking us away from God. Austin's lesson was a good lesson. You let sin enter even your life, much less permeate your life. You can't worship God in spirit and in truth because you have conflicting, quote, spirits operating within you. Deeper lesson, deeper subject. Wonderful, wonderful lesson, wonderful subject, though. We need to do something. We need to take action. And if we fail and people criticize us, why does that even matter to us? Why do we let that be anything at all? If we're trying to serve God and we fail in our outreach, for example, we want to have an outdoor vacation Bible school. We hope that there's lots more kids that show up. We set everything up. We do everything we can to try to make a really good experience for the kids. And for some reason, it rains every single day. And not only do the kids not show up, but all of our equipment and everything else gets messed up because of rain and mud and all that. Well, so, was it wrong to try to do something like that? No. There are certain things we can control. There are certain things we can't control. Do our part and let God handle the rest. That's the thought that I'm trying to get out of this lesson. It's a different approach to this lesson. I'll be the first to tell you. A little different approach.
I think also that in this story, Jesus knows the nature of people.
Okay?
And he also probably wanted to use this as a teaching moment like he did in so many other times.
I'm sure he did.
And this was just one great opportunity to illustrate keeping your eyes on him instead of the waves.
Good. I agree. I agree, Doug. Keep our eyes on Jesus instead of the wave. Now, for those of you who are, potentially saying, well, there's another side to this coin, Jesus could have been having an individualized lesson with Peter. Peter was impetuous. I'm getting out of the boat. I'm going to get out of the boat. I don't think that that's the case here. Jesus told him. He said, well, if it's really you, Lord, bid me to come out there and walk on the water with you. Come. Jesus?
He knows the hearts of man. He knows the thoughts of man. He knew what Peter was thinking. And that little incident is going to help Peter. Of course, we got to look what Peter became, but he still denied Christ.
Well, yeah, yeah.
A long time to really get it.
Yeah.
All this little faith.
Inch by inch, right? Inch by inch. But at least we need to be trying. And I think that's a good piece of the lesson here. Take heart, don't be afraid, Jesus tells them in verse 50. And he got in the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. We're to the hearts are hardened part. Why in the world, after seeing feeding of 15,000 plus people probably, seeing Jesus walking on the water, seeing Peter walk on the water for however long, the Lord rescuing him, the Lord gets in the boat and everything settles out. Why in the world would their hearts be hardened? Why is that? Because faith is the evidence of things hoped for and the substance of things not seen. Did I quote that right? I thought I flipped that. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now we got that. So, were their hearts hardened and they lost faith? Or were their hearts hardened because they didn't have faith? They hadn't got it yet, right? Is that what you're thinking? That's what I'm thinking. Peter had faith to get out of the boat, but he didn't have faith to stay out of the boat. They didn't even have faith to get out of the boat. So there was a crisis of faith because their hearts were hardened, because it's hard to believe what we don't understand. It's easy to deny what we can't comprehend based on our own life experiences. Well, that's what they're ultimately going to realize, that Jesus is God, and he said he came from God, and he said he spoke for God. So, hey, you know what? That's all the time I got. I wish I had more. I do. Thanks for being here, though.